September 24th, 1877, a hill called Shiroyama in southern Japan. 500 samurai warriors stand ready for their final battle. They're surrounded by 30,000 Japanese Imperial Army soldiers with rifles, artillery, and Gatling guns. The samurai have swords, bows, and maybe a handful of old rifles. This isn't a fight. This is a suicide. These men aren't here to win. They're here to die with honor. This is the last stand of the samurai and the end of a 1,000-year warrior culture. Let me back up, because you need to understand what led to this moment. ... For centuries, the samurai ruled Japan. They were the warrior elite, the nobles, the ones who lived and died by the sword and the code of Bushido. In 1868, everything changed. The Meiji Restoration modernized Japan almost overnight. The emperor wanted Japan to compete with Western powers. That meant factories, railways, a modern army, and no more samurai. The government started stripping away samurai privileges. First, they banned wearing swords in public. Then, they abolished the samurai class entirely. Imagine being a warrior whose family served for 800 years, and suddenly you're told you're obsolete. Your sword is illegal. Your entire way of life is over. Some samurai accepted it. Others didn't. Saigo Takamori didn't. He was one of the most respected samurai in Japan, a military genius, a man of honor. He'd actually helped create the new Meiji government, but watching them destroy everything he believed in broke him. In 1877, he led a rebellion. Not because he wanted power, because he wanted to preserve the samurai way, even if it meant death. At first, Saigo had 40,000 men. Samurai from all over Japan joined him. They won early battles through skill and courage, but the Imperial Army had numbers and modern weapons. Slowly, Saigo's force got pushed back. Battle after battle, more samurai died, more deserted. By September, only 500 remained. They retreated to Shiroyama, a hill near Kagoshima. They knew this was the end. The Imperial Army surrounded them completely. 30,000 soldiers, artillery on every side, Gatling guns positioned on the high ground. For 2 days, they bombarded Shiroyama. Shells rained down non-stop. The samurai had nowhere to hide. No reinforcements coming, no supplies. Just 500 men waiting to die. September 24th, at dawn, the bombardment stopped. Silence. The samurai knew what came next. Saigo Takamori was already wounded from previous battles. He could barely walk, but he put on his armor, drew his sword. His men did the same. 500 warriors in traditional armor, facing a modern army. And they charged, swords raised, battle cries echoing, running straight into rifle fire. It was suicide, and they knew it. The Imperial soldiers opened up with everything. Rifles cracking, Gatling guns tearing through the samurai ranks, artillery shells exploding. Men fell by the dozens, but the ones still standing kept running, kept charging. Some made it close enough to actually fight hand to hand before being shot down. Saigo didn't make it far. He was hit almost immediately. Too wounded to continue, he sat down on the hillside. He asked his friend to help him commit seppuku, ritual suicide, to die with honor. His friend beheaded him as tradition demanded. The greatest samurai of his generation died by the sword as he lived. The battle lasted less than an hour. By the end, all 500 samurai were dead or dying. Not a single one surrendered. They charged into certain death, because dying honorably was more important than living in a world that had no place for them. The Imperial Army had won, but there was no celebration. Even the soldiers who killed the samurai respected what they'd witnessed. These weren't rebels or criminals. These were warriors who chose death over dishonor. The last true samurai. Japan buried Saigo Takamori with full honors. Years later, they pardoned him and built statues. He became a symbol of traditional Japanese values. The men who died fighting to preserve a dying culture became a national hero. Satsuma Rebellion ended that day on Shiroyama. It was the last time samurai fought as samurai. After 1877, the sword gave way to the gun. The warrior code gave way to modern military discipline. Feudal Japan died completely, and modern Japan was born. But here's what most people don't understand about that final charge. Those 500 men weren't delusional. They weren't stupid. They knew exactly what they were doing. They weren't fighting to win. They were fighting to prove something. That there are things worth dying for. That honor matters. That a warrior dies on his feet with a sword in his hand, not old and forgotten. The movie Last Samurai got some things right and a lot wrong, but the core truth is there. This really happened. This really happened. This really happened. This really happened. 11,000. Scary, cold. Their worlds turned into one spark of warning. But who among you is still pressing there in the unknown? There, in the dead forest, 500 men really did charge into certain death rather than surrender, and the world watched the end of an era. September 24th, 1877. The day the samurai died, not in bed, not in defeat, but in a final, glorious, suicidal charge against the modern world that had no room for them. That's not tragedy, that's legend.